My dear friends, good morning to you. And I welcome you all to Mass. I welcome all those joining us online, so to speak. This is the day the Lord has made. We rejoice and are glad in it. My former bishop back home, who is now late, Bishop Mark Unebu, had in his coat of arms, every bishop has a coat of arms, he has his motto written out in his coat of arms. And that motto says, Fortis in fide. Fortis in fide. Fortis in fide is taken from St. Peter's letter, first letter of St. Peter, chapter 5, verse 9, where the Apostle Peter was addressing the Christian community about the importance of remaining strong in faith, even in the face of challenges and difficulties. Fortis in fide. That's a Latin expression, a Latin rendition of strong in faith. When I was the assistant secretary of my archbishop, who is also now retired, I had the opportunity of having a conversation with this bishop who received me into the major seminary back in 1989. And we were talking about why he chose that motto. He said, at the time he became a bishop in 1970, we just finished the Nigerian Biafra Civil War with a lot of devastation in the country, with a lot of things to be rebuilt. And according to him, the only way to face the overwhelming or the enormity of work before him was to remain strong in faith. Because the Irish bishop who just left, Bishop J.B. Whelan, left the diocese recovering from the ravages of war in 1970. So for him, the only sure way to deal with the challenges or the difficulties or the enormity of the work was to remain strong in faith. Until date, that expression gives testimony to the great work he did in my archdiocese and handed over to the archbishop who retired and eventually to the current archbishop who is now my archbishop. Fortis in fide. Strong in faith is the key for us to understand beautifully the readings of today. Whether the first reading, talking about the prophet Jeremiah, or the second reading from the letter to the Hebrews, talking about perseverance in running the race before us with our focus fixed on Jesus, or even in the gospel where Jesus talks about setting the earth on fire and wishing that it were already blessing. The key to understanding these set of readings is to remember that phrase, fortis in fide, strong in faith. How does this apply to the readings? I'll make it simple. In the first reading of today, we heard the story of Jeremiah. What was the crime of Jeremiah? Where did he go wrong? He was a prophet called by God to speak in his name. So, why did he go wrong? Why did the people come together against him? Very simple. He was not saying the things they wanted him to say. He was not saying the things people wanted to hear. He was rather speaking the mind of God, and people got so uncomfortable with his prophecies that they decided to do away with him. If you read the book of Jeremiah, you see so many times he was persecuted for standing on the path of the truth, for speaking in the name of God. Once again, fortis in fide. Did Jeremiah accept defeat? No. Did he conform to what people wanted? No. He stood steadfast, speaking in the name of God that merited him all kinds of persecutions. In the whole scenario that played out in the first reading of today, only one person, just one, was able to speak up against the evil against Jeremiah. Who was that? Ebed-Melech. One person. When they went to the king said, well, I'm helpless. You know why the king said that? Because he did not want to offend the people. He wanted to conform to what the people wanted. He's in your hands. I can't do anything about this. So that he will go on pleasing the people and doing what they want the king to do. Only one person spoke up, Ebed-Melech. And with all this in mind, let's shift our attention to the gospel of today and see where Jesus was talking about setting the earth on fire and wishing that it were already blazing. What kind of fire is Jesus talking about here? What kind of fire? Jesus is talking about the fire of Christian virtues, the fire of the principles of the gospel, the fire of faith and hope, the fire of Christian love, the fire of fidelity to the principles of the gospel. That's it. Because when an individual stands on the principles of the gospel, what happens? There is bound to be division. The division may begin at home with people who do not agree with you. It may begin from the office of the workplace or even in the church. People who do not agree with you, especially when you stand on the principles of the gospel, when you stand on Christian principles, the division will come. For many people, when they see those divisions coming, what do? I don't want any problem. I want to be at peace with everyone. Okay, let's roll. Whatever you want, let's do it. Conformism, that's the word. You want to conform to the standards of the world or conform to the standards of the society, what everybody wants. I usually tell people, Christianity or the gospel message is not about making you feel good. I'll say it again. Christianity or the gospel message or the gospel principles is not about making you feel good. No. It's about speaking to your heart. It's about stirring up something, evoking something from within that you may respond positively. That's what the good news does. If any good news makes you feel good, feel okay where you are, then there is something that is not right with that news. And that's what Jesus meant in the gospel of today. I have come to set fire on the earth, and how I wish it were already blazing. And as we think about this, it is not surprising that Jesus will address you and I as the light of the world and the salt of the earth. And in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, he asks, do you light a lamp and hide it under a table? No. The light must shine. And what happens when a salt loses its taste? It's useless. So Jesus says, you are the light and the salt of the earth, meaning you add meaning to the society. You and I, by virtue of our baptism, by virtue of our Christian principles, by towing the line of what Jeremiah did in the first reading of today, remaining faithful and steadfast in following God, and nothing on earth could be compared with that advantage of standing by the gospel principles. No wonder St. Paul in his letter to the Philippians chapter 3, verse 8 to 9 says, nothing can ever be compared to the supreme advantage of knowing Christ Jesus as my Lord. Because of Jesus, I count everything I have gained in life as rubbish. That's the word. The Greek word is skubala. Skubala describes rubbish, something that is of no use anymore. That's the word that St. Paul used in his letter to the Philippians chapter 3, verse 8 to 9. So today, as Jesus talks about this fire that he's about to set in our hearts, in our minds, in our consciousness, we turn to him in prayer. That even if we may not have done it in the past, even if we have not remained faithful, we're not going to get discouraged. And that's my message to all of us. We're not going to get discouraged. We're going to continue to bear witness to Jesus in season and out of season. And that's the message of the second reading of today, to persevere in running the race ahead of us with our focus fixed on Jesus. And my prayer for all of us in this Mass is that God will grant us all the graces we need to be able to run this race without going or without being tempted by this spirit of conformism, accepting whatever the society wants us to accept. There has got to be that distinction between who is a Christian and who is not a Christian. It has to be clear. There are no two ways about it. That's the good news. We are not alone in this. Jesus, the perfecter and the leader of our faith, is taking the lead and we are following. I want to leave you with these words from Thomas à Kempis. I'm sure many of you have read The Imitation of Christ from Thomas à Kempis. Thomas à Kempis says in chapter 12 of his book, he says, chapter 2, verse 11, he says, Jesus has always many who love his heavenly kingdom, but few who bear his cross. He finds many to share his table, but few to take part in his fasting. All desire to be happy with him. Few wish to suffer anything for his sake. Many love him as long as they encounter no hardship. Think about that. Many love him as long as they encounter no hardship. So I want to ask you, where do you belong? Those who love him without hardship, or those who love him even in the face of hardship? Think about that. And God bless you.